And good morning and welcome to the JT Show, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Glad you're here, everybody. Does it sound a little different? I think it does, Dave.
It sounds a lot different. There's no lag either because guess what? JT's in the house. He's here in the studio.
I am here just as a guest today, but feeling good this morning, and I wanted to come in and hang out with you guys. Rhino, what's going on, brother?
Oh, not too much. Just trying to get everything on the stream going.
Well,
you can watch us on Facebook Live.
Looks like the inside of the space shuttle in here.
It's changed just a little bit, yeah. It's changed several times over the last few months.
You know, this is the first time I've put these headphones on since January, and they were sitting right where I left them in there, is what Gary said. I didn't realize that, but that it's good to be in the studio, man. It's I'm feeling good. I guess I'll get this out of the way real quick before we get to what we want to talk about. And what we want to talk about today is this bad Initiative 65, which is bad for Mississippi. And we'll tell you why coming up. But here today, feel good. I had some chemo yesterday at UMMC. My Dr. Halal over there is just wonderful, and the people at MMC are wonderful. It's a great place to go if you have cancer, and I'm not knocking any of the other places. That's where I got referred to from another place that I was going to see. I'm not downgrading any other cancer center or anything here in Mississippi, but they've come a long way for me there, and my doctor recommended me to go to Houston, which is the MD Anderson Cancer Center. And you notice how the cancer's crossed out.
I was going to comment on that.
Right.
I love it.
Right. So I did some chemo yesterday. I was in Houston last week. My daughter took me out there. She went with me, which was an interesting trip because I was wanting to listen to the Van Halen channel, and she was wanting to listen to Tay-Tay, Taylor Swift. So we had to argue about that all the way out there and back. We did stop at Buc-ee's, though. You'll be glad to know, Rhino, we did stop at Buc-ee's. I got a couple of barbecue sandwiches for lunch. I was starving when we left, but everybody's got to stop at Buc-ee's. We stopped at Buc-ee's in Baytown and got some junk. Anyway, went out there for a PET scan. With people that may not understand, you have MRIs, you have CT scans, and you have PET scans, and PET scans are for cancer patients, per se. They give you radioactive glucose that goes all through your body, and then they can see, you know, what lights up is what is cancer. So I kind of had a combination of a PET scan, CT scan, and they checked me out, and I'm either in remission or I'm that close, and I'm holding up a 16th of an inch on my finger, which is what they're warning. They said they don't know if what they saw light up was actually cancer or if it was just some inflammation from leftover. I still have some scar tissue from where the swollen lymph node was, or the tumor, if you will, but had a PET scan, got a great report. I still have a journey. That is stem cell transplant. That's what they want to do. I could go through and continue with chemo and maybe some radiation, and we could probably knock it out, but the chances of it coming back in 6 months, 8 months to 2 years would be very probable. A lot of people with lymphoma, which, by the way, is a very rare cancer. A lot of people don't realize that, but it is. But as you saw last night, Jeff Bridges tweeted out he was diagnosed with it. But the good news for lymphoma, it is very treatable. Now, it's tough to treat it, but it is very treatable. It is a process that you go through. But you can be cured, and they told me that back in January, that I could be cured. And that's what they're telling me now. So I will go back and go through stem cell transplant and spend quite some time out in Houston, most of it by myself because of how they do this. They isolate you and don't want you to get sick after they take after the chemo. They give you a wicked dose of chemo. They take out your T cells. They give you, as they call, lethal dose chemo, and it kills your bone marrow, your blood, all your blood, white and red, everything, platelets. And then they start giving you back your healthy T cells that they have frozen, and it's the best way to get complete cure. And that's what they told me out there in Medical Disney World, is what I call it. And it's a wonderful place, and this is just part of the journey, part of God's plan that He's put in front of me. I never expected the last time I was in this studio talking that it would be 8 months later before I would come back. You know, I had told everybody on that Friday that I'd gotten a diagnosis of lymphoma, and the doctors felt real good about it, and they did. I was going to do treatment, do everything, and I just wasn't counting on a pulmonary embolism and 5 cardiac arrests in the emergency room, which kind of, that'll set you back a little bit.
Yeah, even a lymphoma aside, that sets you back, man.
Well, you know what's funny is, you may not know this, Dave, but I actually had my first chemo treatment while I was intubated on a ventilator.
Wow.
They gave that to me because they were basically trying anything at that point. That's how bad it was. You know, I don't really like to talk about this, but I do. I do. Let me rephrase that. I do like to talk about this because I believe that God saved me and performed a miracle on me so I can tell the story that miracles still happen. Because they told my wife and daughter, in fact, my daughter at lunch told me Saturday that she actually said her goodbyes to me, and I never knew that. I was out. And she told me that, and it really brought it into perspective as how bad it was. I was out. I didn't. Last thing I remember in the emergency room, the doc said, "Dude, you got a blood clot. You got a blood clot. I got to intubate you." And I'm like, "You're crazy, man. I just can't catch my breath." And he said, "No." He said, "No, we got to intubate you." And I knew what that meant. I mean, they were going to put me on a vent. And I said, "Okay." And it wasn't 2 seconds later. I woke up 2 weeks later. But they had told my wife and daughter to call my son from Tuscaloosa because I wouldn't make it through the night. That was after the 5 cardiac arrests, which the little nurse, Maggie, in St. D saved me by herself. And put me on the vent, put me in the ICU, said he's not going to make it. And on the, they were trying everything. I was literally on oxygen and nitric oxide at the same time, trying to get my oxygen levels up. And it was about 8 days of that. They kept telling them he's not going to pull out of this. In fact, they were getting to the point of, thinking about what's next. How long are we going to do this? And I turned the corner one night, and they came in that morning and said he had a good morning. Things were looking up, and then it kept getting better, and kept getting better. And on the 13th day, they took me off the ventilator, took me off the medication. I was on fentanyl and propanol at the same time. So I was about as out as you could put somebody. And the stories I can tell, some of the dreams and hallucinations I had while I was on it was amazing. But the worst part of it all was being conscious on the vent there for the last day and a half. I was trying to figure out any way I could get that thing out of my mouth. But that's why I tell the story. That's why I want to tell this story, that God delivered me out of St. Dominic's Hospital to tell this story. That these things in this world that we live in now, and all the division and all the hate and all the things that you see, God's still working. And he's working every day. And he's working even for people like me. I go back to Amazing Grace. A wretch like me, why would he save me? And he, people say, does God talk to you? Yeah, he does. He really does. He hadn't talked to me. He hadn't said, JT, I want you to go and tell your story, but he has. And that's my reason why I'm here. Is my purpose is to tell that story. And I'm going to tell it again on the radio as many times as I can. But more than that, I want to go out and I want to tell other people and that God's real. He performs miracles every day. God's going to take me. This is part of his plan to take me through this stem cell, which isn't going to be fun. It's not going to hurt. It's just going to be very hard. It's going to be like the hardest chemo I've gone through.
And it's going to be a long process.
Well, the worst part is going to be the isolation, because even without COVID, I would still be isolated. And it's going to be around the holidays, but I'm trying to mentally prepare myself for that. And God hadn't put anything in front of me I hadn't been able to handle yet. And I believe that he's putting this in front of me so I can get well, so I can continue to tell that story. All right, enough about that, but I did want to tell you that God's out there. He's working for you. Just ask him, and ask him into your heart, folks. If it's not there, it's real. He's real. Don't let other people tell you he's not. Don't let social media and all these people that are on the left that tell you that God's not real or they blaspheme him or make fun of him. You're listening to a miracle right here, right now.
The JT Show continues next. To be in the studio with us, JT himself. And you know, I'm just going to take a guess. Just looking at Twitter, I know how you feel about Initiative 65. I got a good idea anyway.
Well, it's bad for Mississippi. And I'm going to start this off, and I'm going to have to repeat this more than once. I am not against medical marijuana. I watched my dad die the worst death that you could die. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease. It wouldn't have, I don't know if it would have done anything for him, but if he could have taken it, if it would have done something, if it would have comforted him, I'd have been all for it. I am not against medical marijuana. I don't need it for what I've controlled it with. Everybody says, oh, you need it, JT. You're going through cancer and chemo. I don't. I do it with water. I do it with water and vitamins and a lot of fruit. Vitamins, things like that, what the doctors have told me to do. And, of course, I haven't lost my appetite because they give me so much steroids every time I take chemo. I eat like a horse. But I understand other people deal with it in other ways, and I get that. I understand that. And for cancer patients, it probably does help some people. Not against it. But Initiative 65 is the wrong way. And here's the reason why I tell you this, folks. It changes the Constitution. Well, the ones on the other side, well, the legislature they can just go back and change whatever they need to change. It doesn't work like that, folks.
Nope.
This is a statewide referendum to change the Constitution, and the only way that we could ever go back to make any future changes would be with another statewide vote. And the medical marijuana 2020 people have done a good job of hiding that from you. Now, I'll give them credit. They've done a hell of a job of pulling the wool over our eyes, and they even got me. I signed the petition. I did, and I wish I wouldn't have now.
Now, let me guess. Somebody came up to you and said,
well, we were interviewing them.
Older people.
We were interviewing. Actually, Jamie did it, and Jamie's a smart young lady. She's a great spokesperson. They got a slick campaign done. They've got all these things, and what they've done is they've sold this to people, but they haven't told them the whole truth. And now when people challenge them on it, they just say, oh, no. They've come in. Look, this is a lot of out-of-state money. There's one legislator that's going to make a bunch of money off of this. He's behind this like there's no tomorrow. You've got other people that you got a lot of out-of-state money, and then you got a lot of people here in state, and we all know some of them very well that are going to get big-time rich off of this because no tax money from the medical marijuana industry, if it passes in November or 2 weeks from today, if it passes in Mississippi, all the tax money can only go back into the marijuana industry. There's no money for schools. And where in the hell is Nancy Lumen, the parents' campaign? Where are all these educators that jump up and down anytime they see money that they're not getting? I can't believe they're silent on this. They haven't said a word. There's no money for roads. There's no money for bridges. There's no money for law enforcement. There's no money for anything except to roll it right back into the medical marijuana industry and to try to make it bigger. This gives special constitutional protections to the marijuana industry. The legislature can't touch it. The governor can't do anything with it. Nobody can. And folks, if you don't believe this isn't going to have a negative impact on communities and kids and all of Mississippi, you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. Because first of all, they can put it anywhere. This is a $14 billion industry, and this is nothing but a giveaway. And the Constitution will be changed. The legislature can't touch it. And, of course, they're all saying, well, it's marijuana and it's medicine. Okay, again, I'm going to repeat. I'm not against medical marijuana. Okay?
There's number two.
I'm not against medical marijuana. But they have allowed special protections where they can sell this anywhere, as long as it's not 500 feet from a school, a church, or a daycare. 500 feet?
Well,
500 feet, that's a little more than a football field.
Well, and the thing is, the way the law is currently written, and I know this from having served 2 terms on grand jury, you can forward an enhancement whenever you're judging on the grand jury for sale or possession within 1,000 feet of a school or a church.
Right.
So it's an even shorter limit than what we already have.
Folks, let me tell you something. They have spent millions and millions of dollars to put this big marijuana agenda to us here with Initiative 65. And what they want to do is they want to maximize the ability to legally sell marijuana with the least amount of restrictions for the biggest profit, which Mississippi doesn't get to touch. Now, and here's the point. Now, folks, I went to college. I worked in the rock and roll radio industry. I've seen it all, okay? I worked in the rock and roll industry radio. Did you see my Van Halen tweet?
Yes, I did.
Back in 95 when Eddie died. Play some Van Halen today. Will you, Rhino? Just a little bit. I was listening to Van Halen last night, man. I'm still just sick about Eddie. Initiative 65 will allow you 5 ounces of pot a month. Now, folks, I've seen some professional pot smokers in my day. I've been in the radio industry since 1989. That's 10 joints a day. I don't believe I've ever been around. I've seen somebody, a couple of people come close, but I don't know of anybody I know of ever in my life that had the capacity to smoke 10 joints a day. That's a lot of weed.
Not in still function.
Unless they've just got such a tolerance that they have to have. That's a lot of weed. Okay? And so what's going to happen? Medical marijuana users are then going to take whatever else they have, they're going to turn around and they're going to sell it on the black market or sell it to kids or sell it to whoever they want.
Or family members are going to grab it when they're not looking because they've got more than they can use.
Right, exactly. And it's going to be accessible. Folks, all you got to do is follow the money. And everybody says, oh, well, what do you want, Big Pharma? You're just against this because you're for Big Pharma. Guess what? Big Pharma's behind it. The CEO, the former Big Pharma CEO of OxyContin, is in the medical marijuana business. Guess who else is in the medical marijuana business?
Who?
The cigarette companies.
Of course.
Altria or Altria, however you say it. 100% of the ownership of 2 companies is based in Canada, the Cronus Group and Altria. Guess what? Big tobacco, big pharma. So your argument about big pharma, or you want us on opioids, you want us on this, again, I'm not against medical marijuana. I'm against Initiative 65 because it's wrong. It's wrong. It has no way to be controlled by the state of Mississippi. Let me tell you another thing, folks. They can put a pot shop in any town, anywhere they want to, and the cities can't stop it. They can't zone them out. Mm-hmm. Because in the Constitution it says any commercial property. And the city can't. So basically here, I'm going to give you Madison for an example. That's where I live. Okay? But I'll make other examples. So right now, on the corner of Hoy Road and 51, y'all all know the old Walgreens. It's sitting there vacant. That'd be a big, gigantic pot shop. And there's not a thing in the world the mayor or the board or alderman could do to stop it if they wanted to pay the rent. And that's just barely 500 feet from First Baptist Church of Madison and a daycare. Well, there ain't no big deal, JT. I don't want a pot shop in my city. And if they want to put a pot shop, go put it somewhere else. Go put it down by the strip clubs or in the industry, in the highly industrial areas where you're at. I don't want my kids seeing a sign, and nobody else wants to see their kids, teenagers driving to school, seeing a sign with a big marijuana leaf lit up on the thing saying, "Come get your pot, your medical marijuana here.
You know, the way you said that brings up a really good aspect of this, is that they keep hammering the term medical marijuana.
Oh, and dispensaries.
Dispensary.
Dispensary is another word for a pot shop.
Yeah.
Go look in any state where they are, folks. They advertise them, and they advertise pot. Well, you have to go to a doctor to get that. Well, yeah. Folks, cities get 18.5% off the state's 7% sales tax. Cities will get nothing from this. And you go, yeah, you got a handful of law enforcement that's for it. But go ask the majority of law enforcement. See which groups are out against this. Folks, you need to vote no on Initiative 65. Your city's going to get nothing. Your schools are going to get nothing. Your roads and bridges are going to get nothing. And the cities are not going to be able to control it. And folks, if you don't believe this isn't going to put more marijuana on the streets, you have lost your minds. They're giving people 5 ounces of dope a month. Who in the hell can smoke 5 ounces of weed a month? I've never met anybody, and I've known some good ones. They usually sat behind a microphone spinning records.
I wasn't going to start bringing up old stories, but I think we can both tell some stories about that. 601-879-4395. Tammy from Boonville. JT just spoke my thoughts on medical marijuana. Good to hear you, JT.
Glad to be in the studio, y'all. I can't tell you how good it feels to be here. I'm not in a big chair. Dave's in the big chair, and that's fine because I'm not ready to be in the big chair. But I will be back. I promise y'all that. I will be back. It'll more than likely be after the first of the year before I'm back full time. It was good to see Big Daddy. I was hoping, he hadn't chewed me out in almost 10 months now since I don't know.
That's a big change.
And I was hoping I might get a good one there for a second. Like, what are you doing up here? you know, I'm just kidding. I'm going to tell y'all something, man. I work for the greatest company in the state of Mississippi. I mean that, and I mean that for you, Dave, and Gerard, and I forget the other guy's name that helps.
Taylor.
I'm sorry. Taylor Sledge that helps. And then Rhino doing all the stuff, and you guys filling in, and Bob doing my ball games for me. Boy, I wanted to call that one Friday night so bad when Madison Central beat Starkville. It was a big game, big, huge win for them. But I watched every minute of it. But I'm just here to tell you I work for the greatest company in the state of Mississippi. And I don't know why in 1997 when I took this job here, started as a producer, that I ever dreamed I'd be here this long and be doing what I'm doing. So Kim and Steve, the people that make the decisions here, have just been unbelievable with me and my family to help me through this. And I can't say enough. I don't know what to say, but that I work for the greatest company in the state of Mississippi, and there's no doubt about that. All right, back to Initiative 65. Now, you put something on me I didn't realize, Dave.
You hadn't caught this. Part of Initiative 65 is that the state has to give the marijuana industry, if this passes, a $2.5 million loan out of the rainy day fund to get it going.
Now that brings me back to the point of what I'm trying to tell y'all, folks. 65 changes the Constitution, and there's not a thing in the world that the people you elected can do about it. Well, we elected 65. Well, guess what? What happens if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris go into office in November? And don't you think for a second that they can't? Because this election is... I don't know.
I don't know how it's going to go.
I don't know how it's going to go either. If I didn't think they weren't going to steal ballots and do all this ballot harvesting and everything, I think Trump wins bigger than he beat Hillary. But they're going to count votes after November 3rd in some of these states. I just don't think that you can count on this. So what if we need the rainy day fund?
Well, you talk about that, and just very quickly, the Supreme Court yesterday ruled in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, thanks, John Roberts.
Yeah, that was great. We appreciate that. That they can count votes up until the Friday after Election Day, even if they don't have a postmark. So when they see how things go after that Tuesday, then they can go do what
How
they
do you mail something
need
without
to
a
do.
postmark?
Yeah, but that's part of it.
All
That's
right,
the way it is.
back to marijuana.
Yeah.
I'm for medical marijuana. I'm against Initiative 65. Vote no, and then vote for 65A in case it does pass. Or you can vote no on both of them if you want to. But folks, they treat this stuff like it's medicine. I'll tell you a funny thing. I got out of the car the other day, and I saw the doobie papers, rolling papers, in the package. And it was on the ground. Someone had obviously rolled them up a doobie, and it was the last one, and they'd thrown it out. And it made me laugh because it said, organic rolling papers.
That's what we're going to worry about.
So the pothead was worried about having his papers organic, but God knows what was in the marijuana, what was sprayed on it, to not only keep the bugs or whatever off of it or the weeds out of it, but no telling what they sprayed on it to make it even more potent, but they rolled it up in an organic rolling paper.
Well, you got to care about the environment, man. Come on.
So they're treating this all like medicine, right?
Right.
Well, when you take medicine, you know what's in it, right? There's no way to control the dosage. Now, at least this marijuana, I guess they'll know what it's in it. But, folks, tell me how smoking and vaping is medicine. There are drugs out there right now. There's 4 FDA-approved drugs based on cannabis already that has research and that has been checked out and it's safe, and it's the same medicine. It's the same thing. It's full of THC. It does the same thing as somebody smoking marijuana. And I guess the final thing on this thing is, what kind of message does this send to our kids? Well, this is my final message. I'm going to get to what I've argued today.
I knew better than that.
Folks, I've had people argue with me on Twitter about this. Okay, go right now. Get pulled over with pot and a gun in your car and see what happens. You're going to be charged with possession of marijuana, and you're going to be charged with possession of a firearm while in possession of marijuana, and that's a hefty little fine. That is a federal offense, and you're also going to be fined heavily, and guess what? You can kiss that gun goodbye. When you fill out a NICS check at Academy Sports to buy a gun, it asks you if you use marijuana or any other Schedule whatever drug.
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1 drug. If you lie on that NICS check, you've committed a felony. You cannot have a concealed carry permit and a medical marijuana card at the same time. It ain't going to happen. If you have a medical marijuana card, you lose the right of having the ability to the Second Amendment laws that we have in the state of Mississippi, which means you can carry a gun in your backpack. You can carry a gun in your pocket. You can carry a gun openly even without a permit. You can carry one in your car. But, folks, if you're using marijuana and you're using a medical marijuana card, you can kiss it goodbye. If you have a medical marijuana card and you're on a deer stand with a rifle, same thing. Oh, JT, you're making this up. You're fear-mongering. You're scaring people. Look it up. If you think I'm lying, if you think I'm making this up, look it up for yourself. Challenge me. Oh, well, they don't have problems in these other states. Explain to me how they don't have problems in these other states when marijuana is still a Schedule 1 drug and is against federal law. And I can assure you of one thing. The Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks will enforce that law. I promise you. Now, you may have other places in liberal states and other places that some people may turn their head to that. It ain't happening in Mississippi. So you can kiss your gun rights, and everything else away if you want medical marijuana and you want the right to have 10 joints a day. You need to think about that. You really, really need to think about that. And when you say, it's not happening in other states, keep telling yourself that. It'll happen here. I can promise you that, because we've got too many law enforcement that have come out against this, and they're not playing. And that's the other side on it, on law enforcement. Look at what kind of burden our law enforcement is under now. With the rhetoric that's out there that law enforcement is bad and how horrible they are and the way they treat people and the way they do this and they do that. So what's law enforcement supposed to do now? When they pull somebody over, are they high on pot? I don't know. We don't have a test for that. And then if they've got pot or a gun that's going to get them even that much more up on edge, there's really no way that they're going to be able to deal with this. And not only it hurts our city, it hurts our state. It's going to put pot shops in your community. And you know where these communities are going to be? It's going to be where the well-connected and the wealthy are. So DeSoto County, get ready.
And one other thing,
Madison County, get ready.
We had Police Chief from Ridgeland, John Neal, on yesterday, and he's the incoming president of the Mississippi Police Chiefs Association, and he brought up something I hadn't thought of. There is going to be a big black market in fake medical marijuana cards. Mm-hmm. That's coming. That's going to happen, and I think he was exactly right. And the problem is the way 65 is written, there's no way for the police to access the database to tell if it's even an actual medical marijuana card.
Folks, this thing is bad. It is bad, bad, bad. And it's all being sold to you under the guise of medical marijuana and how great it is, and how we've got all these people that are signed on to it, from clergy to teachers to law enforcement. It's about money, folks, and it's about a handful of people in Mississippi making a bunch of money, and it's about out-of-state people making a bunch of money, and it's about big pharma and cigarette companies making money. They're behind this because people aren't smoking cigarettes. All of a sudden, cigarettes are the most dangerous thing in the world, and marijuana is the greatest thing in the world. It's about like what the rest of the left is twisting. I'll do one more with you, man. Hang on. Let's hang out one more time.
That'll work. One more time with JT on the JT Show, Super Talk.
Edward Van Halen.
That's a little throwback to earlier in the career there, isn't it?
The last album that they did with Dave, 1984, first concert I ever saw.
Oh, boy.
By myself.
You
now,
picked a great one to start with.
When I actually saw Elvis, when I was 7, my parents took me. They had tickets, and I stood we were on the floor of the Coliseum, and I stood on a folding chair to see him, and I remember it was raining, and the Coliseum was leaking on the backup singers. But, boy, what a great job that they've done with the Coliseum and the trademark. Andy Gibson and those guys. And then they got the carousel from Muskelly's. They're going to put that up. I know the fair's been tough on everybody because of COVID and the rain, and they got it going through the end of the weekend. So y'all go support the Mississippi State Fair and eat a biscuit for me.
Yeah, and
I can't have a biscuit.
They extended it, so it's all the way till Sunday.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. And they've done the best they can, just like everybody else. Tell you a quick story. I found this out last night. I've been building a Van Halen playlist. You know, I have a little time on my hands from time to time.
Every once in a while.
So I was building me a new Van Halen playlist on my phone. Just I've really through this time gotten back. I've been away from music. It's sort of like it's crazy. I've gotten away from politics through this, keeping up enough to play with y'all and to do my Twitter stuff. But I've really gotten back into music, which since I've been doing talk radio, I've played every song that you could play on the radio. But Rhino, are you familiar with Diver Down?
Oh, yeah.
The second album, right? So Van Halen, we're done with medical marijuana. Vote no on Initiative 65. It's bad. It's bad, bad, bad. Bad, 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 bad. Don't vote for it, folks. It's the wrong message for kids. It's wrong. Everything about it's wrong. All right, back to this, Van Halen. So Van Halen came out with the first album, right? Mm-hmm. Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Eruption, all that. And that was the first album they'd signed. Warner Brothers had signed them. So they were pressuring them to put out another album, which was Diver Down. Pretty Woman, Dancing in the Streets, had a lot of covers because Warner Brothers was dying for him to get an album out. And on that particular album, there's a song called Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now. I don't know if you've ever heard it or not.
I like that song.
Have you heard it?
Yes.
Have you listened to it?
Oh, heck yeah.
So it was just kind of a joke that they did, that they played, but I didn't realize this until I started paying attention to it. But that was Eddie Van Halen's dad that played the clarinet on there, not long before he had died. Now, unfortunately, Eddie inherited a lot of what his dad was. His dad was a terrible alcoholic, as was Eddie, and he dealt with drug addiction and alcohol. And unfortunately, that kind of what, I guess, what caught up to him. He blames it on picks and everything. But those of y'all have never heard it, that's kind of what it sounds like now.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a funny little song they did on Diver Down.
A lot of people have heard it, but they don't realize it's Van Halen.
Right. But that's Eddie's dad, Jan Van Halen. The only song that he ever played on with him, and the only one he ever recorded with him, and it was all David Lee Roth's idea. They had to talk him into it. And they had asked Eddie later in life if there was anybody he could go back and jam with, anybody at all that was gone that he could go back and jam with, and he said it was his dad. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is very cool. Now, you're talking about Van Halen, though. Here's the big question.
But see, now, that was my favorite band and still is. It was my first love, my first band, so that would be always my favorite band.
Now, but I think I know how you're going to answer this.
What?
David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Both.
That's exactly what I thought you were going to say.
Well,
5150 was a great album.
That's my favorite album. It's 5150. Even though I saw them in 1984. I saw them on the 84 tour when they were here in Jackson. It was Eddie's birthday. They had a big cake. And then I turned around in 87. I was a senior in high school and saw them with Sammy. But I was a big fan of Sammy before he became Van Halen. Three Lock Box, Give to Live, all that stuff that he did. So it didn't change anything for me. I just thought David Lee Roth was being a jerk, and he was, and Eddie was being a jerk. You know, they eventually got together, but Dave's so messed up now he can't sing. Eddie could play all the way to the end, though, until he got to where he just couldn't go. But the things he did in the latter years, he's still as good as he ever was. And he had been sick for a long time. It was throat cancer, lung cancer, all kind of cancers, and he'd been battling tongue cancer forever. They sliced out like half his tongue, which he believed it was the metal picks that caused it. Maybe not the cigarettes. I don't know. I'm not going to question. I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
You can't really say. I'd lean more towards the cigarettes myself.
Probably so, but I just hate that music's gone now and we'll never hear it. I always had hoped that somehow, some way, they could all get back together, do a big tour with Dave and Sammy. Of course, like I said, Dave's not hitting on much with the way he sings.
Yeah.
He's got abuse problems too, but feel sorry for Wolfie, and Valerie was there, and his current wife was there, which means they'd all made amends. And she even said he was still the love of her life, and she's remarried. But Eddie Van Halen was the greatest guitarist of my lifetime. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You can't argue it.
It's really hard to argue.
Now, folks older than me, we could talk about this and argue for hours. But he was the greatest guitarist of my lifetime. Thanks for letting me be here. Vote no on Initiative 65. It's bad.